No blacks, no Irish, no dogs. We talk about the Windrush, and there was a load of people from different islands who came to England in the 50s. And I want to big them up because most of them are in heaven now. But through their endeavor, through struggle, racism, they enabled people like me and others like me to survive in Britain. And I want to make sure that those who are gone are remembered.
Tell me about your family's roots. How did your people come to be in Britain, and where in the Caribbean are they from?
When it comes to me, I come from a place called Montserrat. I was born on Harris's Hill. My mum and dad, they came to England. Dad came first, I think 1956. Mama came a year and a half later, and they lived in Finsbury Park, North London. They sent for me and my little sister Caroline, and we came up on a boat called Ascania. Never forget, it's the first time you ever see flying fish. I see some fish racing the boat. Later on in life, I knew them as dolphins. We had a May Day coming over. All of us had to go on deck. When the ship was going down, you think, oh Lord, it ain't going to come back up again. But God was with us, and we end up coming to England, end up in a place called Southampton. We got on a train, first time obviously. Next thing you know, we were heading one way because it was a sleeper train. When we was heading one way, next minute or times later, big people who could be my parents, a ball, them a carry back because the train seemed to do going in the opposite direction because obviously we don't know about these things. We end up in a place called Paddington where we all came off. Mum and Dad and a whole heap of blacks was down there, and more or less you could have find who belonged to you. I just ran straight to Mum with my little sister. From there we went to Finsbury Park. That time I'm 8.5 years old. I'm talking 1959 now. And from there began my journey in Great Britain.
What was it like growing up in a Montserratian Caribbean household in Britain?
I came here when I was 8.5 years old. And when we came to Finsbury Park, North London, my auntie and her husband had a home. And in that home, there was 2 other aunties, with my mum making 3. 4 of us live in a room. And in those days, they had a sign. I never forget when I went to my school, there was a window and there's a notice on the window. No blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And I said to Mum, what that mean? And Mum just kissed her teeth at them stupid white people they don't like Harry. But in those days, the room was hard to find because you're just coming from the Caribbean. So you're depending on either your family or friends from home, people you know, to get somewhere to rest and sleep and go to work from. So that journey was harrowing but loving because we had to live in the same place. Within a year, my dad bought his own house, and we lived about 2 miles away, heading towards from Finsbury Park to a place called Stamford Hill area. A Jewish man gave me dad a mortgage, and we went into our own house. Nothing improved because when we buy our own house, my dad was renting the rooms to Montserratians. So we still ended up 4 in a room with the screen for mum and dad, obviously, and so on. But in that time now, we're beginning to develop relationships, friendships, whether through the blood or through the island you come from. And then we start meeting other people from different islands, Jamaica, St. Kitts, Nevis, Antigua in particular. And from there, we grew into the British system. And going into the British system, I never forget when I went to my first school, they might call me names. So next thing you know, monkey, wog, nigger. Well, me don't know what I talk about because no monkey, no Montserrat, so I couldn't be one of them. But little did I know that they were insulting me. In those days, my first school, the toilets was outside, and I'm inside the toilet doing nature. And they'd climb over the top, and I look down upon me. And they said, the monkeys, you know what I mean? So I went home and I said to Mom, Mom, these kids are calling me names and they're laughing at me. And Mom said to me, what did you do, boy? I said, I laughed back. He says, you keep doing that and they'll soon be your friends. That's one of the greatest advice my mother has given me in terms of how to adjust to a new environment in England. England was racist. Racist insofar that they didn't like us. Now, when I came here, they called us colored boy. Even to this day, when my mom go to heaven, she still used the word colored. But on the journey, coming forward now, I'm reaching secondary school era. Boy, something happened in America where Luther King, Malcolm X, Angela Davis, America was rioting, chanting for black rights, and so on. And we kids growing up, we come from a place where inside the house, it was always BBC World Service. It was radio. You're listening to what's going on in the world, and you're getting that. Yes, we had a television, black and white, but when the aerial don't work, the telly don't work, because sometimes the signal ain't the same, you know? And you go through that period until one day, we were black. Say it loud, we're black and we're proud. Now I'm talking about 14, 15-year-old lads from different islands coming together through school and through playing sports. And then the white man them soon find out, in their own words, F in hell, the darties are hard and they carry love. You know, that's when they went this thing called packy bashing. But through that era, I've been a very, 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 very lucky young person. I came at the right age. I went to the schools. I remember when I was in my primary school, the teacher them used to have the blackboard and chalk. And when they teach us how to count, times table, spell and all that, the teacher will call somebody out the class, go and spell X, Y, Z. And every time I go up there, I spell it. Why? Because the education I got in Montserrat in terms of numeracy and literacy was better than the white boy that was in the class with me and girls. So I can speak English better than the English people and so on. Rather than being congratulated for that, I was sort of chastised in all sort of ways with more name calling. But we come through that barrier because they couldn't bring us down. And the confidence grew as we go into bigger thing. Went to my secondary school. I was the fourth fastest, over 100 yards running at Crystal Palace. They used to have a thing called North London Championships. All the schools used to get up, have the races, and I won the North London Championships and represented North London at Crystal Palace. I came fourth in the 100 yards. All the others had spikes. I had plimsolls. I'm thinking I ain't done too bad. Then they got into rugby, had trials with Middlesex at rugby, cricket, and football. Some big names in English football going back in the 60s. I mixed with them on pitch, going to school and all that. So I'm not here talking about me.com. I'm just explaining the journey we had, the struggles we had to go through. But the biggest amongst them was our parents. Bro, 1963 was the worst winter I've ever lived. When you open your front door, the snow falling in. And you know what? Our parents went to work. We even had to go to school as well, where the snow reached your knee. But how they got to work, God knows. But they never took time out to say them sick or what. Why? Because they need the 2 shilling to pay the rent or the mortgage and let us eat and school kit and all that. So all the great people, whether from Montserrat, Jamaica or any other Caribbean island, those parents, that age group, they did their bit to enable people like me to reach an age where I can look back with pride and respect for their contribution for the betterment of black people in the UK.
What did home and belonging mean to you, with your roots in one place and your life built in another?
Back home was an education for me, because back home there's no such thing as sit down in the house. When the big people, whether it's your bigger brothers or aunties, go in pasture, go plant food, or go pick food. We had goats, we had cattle and all that. So anywhere the big people then go, me follow. After school, of course, and so on. So I'm bodily, physically strong, but my education is good. Because why? What the bigger people then talk about and know about, I get to understand it because I'm always in their company. We had a rum shop in Harris's, my mother's side of the family did. And that's where the drinkers gathered. But because it wasn't too far from where we actually lived, as picnic, you go walk about and so on. Some people had their donkey, but donkey was too big for me unless a big person carry me along. But the culture in Montserrat was oneness. Each one teach one, each one support one, each one respect one. So, for example, if you had meat, because you have the goat and so, but that man had the hard food, yam and so on so, you do a deal. Give me some of your meat and I'll give you some of my hard food. There was no exchange of money as such. It was that kind of way. My luck growing up, my grandparents had a bread shop. So they made bread. People used to come from the north of Montserrat to come to every place, go get bread. Penny bread, as we used to call it, and so on. Some long, some like bun, and so on, you know. So that interaction, you meet in all sorts of different people in your own village, and those who are coming from other villages, because of the nature of how we live together. So that was a great start. Coming to England was different. When I say different, everybody live in different areas. So I left Finsbury Park to Stamford Hill. People live in Paddington, some Stoke Newington, some Hackney. And we used to meet up every Saturday. Mum and the women, of course, because the man them love them right hand on a Saturday afternoon watching grandstand, drinking a beer or two and rum. But every Saturday, Mum, Joseph, we go market. Now we had 3 or 4 markets, Hoxton, Ridley Market, the Great, and Angel Market up Islington. And what you find out, you was meeting more black people on a Saturday at the markets than during the week, because what them a go market for? To buy their breadfruit, to buy them swordfish, to buy everything black, sweet potato, and all them thing there. Because the ordinary shop, them Englishman shop, them don't have it. So it was at the markets that we used to go. But then you meet in other families from different communities, black, and you have that engagement, that interaction. So we were still getting our blackness, but 90% is white. And within that, the racist ones, the children were the ones who talking the negative words and all that. But for me, during that experience, going through my teens and so, the racist was the upper and middle class people then, because they were looking down on us and making their behind chat. But then it rubs off to their kids, and they were the more bolder ones, because you meet them at school and going through, and they're the ones who be calling these names. Even on the TV, you don't see no black people. And what you hear white people on the TV call us nignogs. Alf Garnett, I remember him calling us, and there was no issue about it as far as the white society is concerned. So we were always under the cosh in terms of coloration. But what they couldn't do us in with, education, education, education. And through that, they turn around one at a time and says, oh, they're coming to take our jobs. There was a man called Enoch Powell back in the mid-60s, talking about rivers of blood. He was in Birmingham at the time. And they're talking about us in that kind of way. But they've come to take our jobs. I'll tell you what we did. If our parents who were the slaves, who put the grain into Britain, when the sugar cane and the cotton back in the West Indies, the Englishman then bring it to England, sell it to Europe, to build them ships to go around and control the world in this colonization process and Commonwealth. We came here and our parents, they were laborers. Laborers. The job that the white man don't want, every people them go and do it. Some of them even do too, to make sure that money is in the house. And they had the cheek to turn around and says, we're coming here for their jobs. But we weathered that storm and come through. So as far as me concerned, this Windrush lot who brought me here and all that, they continued to put the great into Britain. Because if nobody was out there doing the labouring and so on, where would England be after Hitler gave them some slaps and hurt up England badly by bombing? But we came here and helped rebuild this country, just like the Irish people did as well. Don't forget them. But they were also classified as them and us. But they're still here today.
What stories did the generation before you pass down about their journey and what they gave up?
The point is, I saw them before they came here. So they gave up their sunshine, as the sun hardly shines in England, pour water every day. And sometimes when you spit, it freezes before it hit the ground. But I don't think they were thinking about it, what I've left behind, because in their head they come here for betterment. Because back home, you didn't have the income. So even though you made bread, it was penny bread. There was no factories or things like that. So everything was self-made. Coming to England was to try and improve the quality of life. That's what it was, to be quite honest. So I didn't see it as giving up. I think it, in their mindset, was progression, hopefully. And a lot of them did very, very well, despite the odds against us.
Across your life here, what was the hardest about being of Caribbean heritage in Britain, and what shaped you?
Well, it was not hard for me because I was one of those youngsters who came at the right time. My father's, when in London, growing up, age 10, 9, 11, 12, white boys, they call them teddy boys. They used to gang up and chase us. They don't come to you one-on-one. It was always a gang of them calling us this name, and if you get catch, you know you're in for a beating. As I said to you, I was the fastest runner in North London, you know what I mean? So they couldn't catch me. But as time went on, more and more black kids was growing up and coming together in terms of solidarity and so on. And then when I go through, I was very lucky, as I said, because at my primary school, my secondary school, I went to college, I went to university, and as God would have it, each of those places, the man or woman who was leading the class took a shine to me and encouraged me in terms of whatever the lessons were. So I didn't have that. And the white boy then trains and mama, they tell me, when them call your name and then laugh, you laugh back. But then my father tell me something as well. Boy, don't thief, don't lie, don't bring no policeman to me door. If you see somebody out there on the ground, pick them up. And always look them in the eye. Just keep looking in them eye. And I followed that, and it worked for me. I wasn't chippy. I didn't go out there insulting people, because my family was not that type of people. Manners, behavior, and respect was the foundation. So if I'm outside playing around in a park or somewhere, and somebody who know me, because they used to come to our house on Saturdays to drink them rum, they would come up and say, boy, what you doing there? And all that. Don't let me go home and tell your father. No, my father never whipped me with a belt. My father whipped me with his eyes. And I can't remember my father ever calling me Joe or Joseph. Boy! Now, depending on the volume, you know whether you're in trouble or not, and so on. So I grew up in that kind of protective environment, but the baseline about it is manners and respect, and show to people as well as your family. So I was a very, very, very lucky person in having that guidance and that protection, both within the house and outside on the street. The big people always had an eye on me.
How have you stayed connected to Montserrat and the wider community?
Well, most Montserratians that I knew came to London. So in London, your father and your auntie them and all that have their Montserrat people who I didn't know because they either come earlier or they live in another village. So there was always that Montserratness, and there was an organization called MOPA, A man called William Trant started that. So there was always that connectivity. And then Montserratians in Birmingham might get red. So next thing you know, car and van, I go Birmingham, and you begin to meet Montserratians in other parts of the UK. And that bond always remained to this day. Obviously, those people was part of that mainly have gone to heaven. Their children are, to a lesser degree, they're still there, but it's not the same organized, let's go to London type of thing for whatever reason. But when it's called like on a St. Patrick's Day exercise, depending where the location is, you find a whole heap of Montserratian turning up to celebrate oneness, because that's the way we are.
You played a real part supporting Montserratians, including through the volcano crisis. Tell us about that.
Mum and Dad went back to Montserrat up St. George's Hill. It was 1987 or something like that, and so on. So I went down to visit on a couple of occasions. And I went to Government House, and I think the governor was a man called Savage, Governor Savage. I saw the volcano. When I saw it, I've never seen colours like that before coming down the hill in terms of the lava flow. I was in Cork Hill at the time. But as I said, I went to Government House and all that because I had status. As an individual, I'm up front. But I was the first black man to be elected in Leicester City, right where we are now. This was my ward. That was in 1987. I served 8 years as a councillor, 4 years in this area and 4 years up the road in another area and so on. So I had that status, the awareness, the connection, spoke to Savage about it. Next thing I know, people were being evacuated. And people are coming to London airport with a letter from Savage, go Leicester, there's a man up there named Joseph Allen. I said, what? Because the way I was speaking to him about stuff and so on. And I think me and him connected. And in actual fact, he grew up not far from here in a place called Melton. So he gave information to the Montserratians and so on. And next thing you know, they were coming. And then I think it was David Brand was the chief minister at the time. I also met him back home. And Reuben, the current one as well, because there was that kind of engagement. I wasn't a rum shop tabby, you know what I mean? And I remember when Mr. Brand, they were coming, because of my position in Leicester, I was able to go to the council, explain to them, go to the benefit office, Department of Works and Pension, explain to them, because what was happening, Montserrat was coming here and they thought they were refugees. And Montserratian, them good talking to you as a black, but when they go up against white people, they cower. So I end up being the mouthpiece, going to the system, the housing, the benefit system, and says, hey, these guys have come home. Look at their passport. Sometimes I get a laugh because somebody say, hey, this is Jim. So when I pass the passport over to the man, he said, but how can you name Joseph? Back home we have nicknames and all sorts of things. That caused a bit of problem. But they were very well accepted. I think we had about 600 come over here. The Refugee Council, who had an office in Leicester, was part of that process. Because as I said, Montserratians was coming to the airport and didn't know what next steps were. So with Mopper in London and myself, we got connected, and even a man who's gone to heaven used to go to the airport and pick up Montserratians and bring them into London. And they stayed with Montserratians until they were able to go through the system to get their housing. So I became some of them in Leicester called me the Great, because it was opening doors that they couldn't have, even if they wanted to, but it wasn't anything more than doing what I should do. I did it for the Somalians when they came, because, hey, truth and right is colourless. And if you come to me and you don't know, all I'm saying to you, don't tell me no lie. I don't want to waste my time on a liar when I could be helping someone who's truthful. And I had that tendency, and through that I connected with all the systems. There are social services. Some of them had children who needed support and so on. Connect them to the schools and so on. And basically from there on in, I am very, very proud of the Montserratians who come to Leicester. Why? They didn't go there upon no dole or benefit and so on. They came and worked to this day. And coming through that, the Montserrat office came into play. And I remember going to London and met David Brandt right next to Scotland Yard. I said, Mr. Brandt, Montserratians are coming here. And some of them in London and them family in Birmingham. There was no connection in the real sense. Why hasn't Montserrat got an office in England? So people know where they can connect with Montserrat, or Montserrat office can connect with their people. Why don't we have that? And with the Refugee Council, we developed the Montserrat organization in London. A lady called Lozelle Howes, who came up, well, I met her back home when she was in office. I think she was in education or something like that, and so on. Janice Panton and all that. Next thing I know, even went to government and spoke up to people. Hey, Montserrat need this. I mean, I beg. Because it's a British passport. Can you see it? But because I had the confidence and the know-how to speak, next thing I know, we got the Montserrat office. I was very disappointed insofar that, not the office, it was like a sneak through the door. So I say, how come Lozelle House come up here, don't know England, and she had run the business? And so on, without anybody from Birmingham or Leicester like myself being part of that process as the person who orchestrated it anyway. But it wasn't a me.com vibe. And was more interested in putting the right people in the right place for the right reason, for the right outcome, for the betterment of Strashans. So that's how my involvement in the months, coming from Savage way back when and coming through to England up to today, people will call me, Joe, I have a little problem in my housing, Joe, and I just go and sort it.
You have been recognised as an alderman and awarded an MBE. What does that mean to you?
It's a shock. I mean, what reward comes to me in terms of status and all that is because I earned it. So being the first black man in Leicester, served 8 years as a councillor, I was still working in the voluntary sector, connecting the Muslims, the Sikhs, the Hindus, the blacks, wherever they are, the women, in terms of inequality and so on, and set up structures to enable us to deal with local authorities. Our luck was after the riots in the 80s when Maggie Thatcher was doing her thing, she put some money to inner areas because the whole of England had burned down, where black youths in particular were saying enough is enough. Why should we be the ones who are unemployed and so on? And she put money into inner areas, so this building we're sitting in was a benefactor of inner area money that went to the local authority, and then we go to them to get the money to pay for youth staff. I became the youth activities organizer for this particular premise that we're sitting today, and through that you meet other groups and your reputation goes out there. And I was lucky enough to be respected because, as I said, truth and right is colorless. So don't give me no, come to me because you're black. I want to know what your problem is, man, and don't tell me no lie type of thing. And that method got respected throughout the system, whether they're councillors or MPs and all that, because I'm not tomfooling around. And through that, I was recommended to get the status of honorary alderman. Put the honorary in front of the alderman. I mean, I want nobody call me elderman. You know what I mean? Honorary Alderman Joseph Allen, the only black man in Leicester City at this time who's got that status, and so on. The MB, but boy, is when somebody said, Joe, you know, you got MB. I said, what are you talking about? But I think what happened at that time, because Mum and Dad came back to England, I was working for Cheshire Fire and Rescue Service. Why? I was advisor to Tony Blair's government. He had a scheme called Beacon Status. What that means, if you're good at housing, you can, and you've got Beacon for it, you can teach another authority how to deal with housing. I got the position of being advisor to Tony Blair government beacon status scheme for community cohesion. Sure my postman dead with weight, the amount of authorities who post them so as to see shortlist along with another brother from the government office and recommend these authorities to the beacon board. And out of that, Cheshire Fire Service was one of them. So what happened, me live here. Mum and Dad came back from the volcano, lived with me until we rehoused him in London. Dad passed away 18, so I was a motorway kid from Cheshire to London to here over the weekend. So communication might have been coming into my home regarding MBE and me not realizing because I'm not, you know what I mean? And it was somebody who says, Joe, you've got an MBE. Said, huh? What do you mean you got MBE? And he went into Google and there was. So in actual fact, I probably got it without me knowing it because there was so much traveling around from town to town, mom, work, home. I had 2 kids as well. So I wasn't focused on my mail in terms of getting the information. So I suspect the invitation came through and unbeknown to me, it got lost in the madness. So, but in terms of the achievement, for someone who come from an island 4 miles wide and 11 miles long, come to England and end up in with what I've got, I'm pleased. I'm pleased. And there's a number of people who are pleased for me as much as there's backstabbers as well. Politics of envy lives, you know.
What does Windrush mean to you, and what do you want younger generations to carry forward?
Well, Windrush means the world to me, insofar that, as I explained in this interview, the opportunity afforded me. The opportunity it afforded parents and other people of that age and all that in order to come out of Jamaica or Trinidad or Barbados or those places where the income was not there. They came here and gave their children a hand up. And some of them did very, very well. Of course, 1 and 2 pocketary because that's the life go. But in general, we put a footprint in this country that cannot be denied. A simple example, you don't see no football team in England without a black man in it. You know what I mean? Because we've come through that era and are there. Why? Because we got more skill than them. We put the music into England. When I came here first, they were ballroom dancers. No calypso, nothing. The calypso was in your, when you have the 78 and I go on. And tutus, that music, the white people, them start love it. And then you get the mighty Americans who come with them soul and so on. Aretha Franklin and the likes. Dionne Warwick, Marvin Gaye and all those, Smokey Robinson. And on top of that, Millie come with our ska. But you know, black people like to dance. So we had the calypso, the ska. From there we come to rocksteady. You know what I mean? And all those musics began to change the mindset and the culture of English people who never had no music of their own. So you hear about the Beatles and Rolling Stone. Them thief, it's from us, because we was the one who was putting that into the culture, whether in Birmingham or London or wherever, because we like our music. And that, again, so I believe what our contribution to this country is massive. What I resent, because of what they talk about this thing called reparation, where the Caribbean islands says, hey, mama, papa, England, give us something back now. Because we work for you, build your ship that you conquer the world with as slaves. So why can't you give us something back? Now, when I say give me something back, I don't mean personal. Why don't you give Barbados something back to build their roads and so on? Why don't you do it to Montserrat, to Jamaica? So you're not giving it to an individual, you're giving it to a government so that they can develop their environment, their schools, their roads, their hospitals, and so on. So my resentment of the way they're treating us, particularly when Theresa May, I round up black people to send them back to the Caribbean, when she says, oh, you don't belong here, where's your passport? But if I come to England in 1960, 59, you expect me to have a passport 40, 50, 60 years later? Those documents, because you're moving around. So our ignorance has created an environment where lots of our people has been sent back. Some of them gone home and dead, where their rights are here. Their money is here. Some of them homes are here. And the Britishness has caused a lot of our people anxiety, and poverty for no good reasons, given that we're the one who put the great into Britain. So going forward, in terms of my children, they're not Caribbeanized. They're British. So a lot of them have never, they see the West Indies on the map. But in terms of actual foot on the ground, no, they have not been able to do that. The odd one or two, but not in the numbers. When you decide to go home, who are you going to go home to? You're going to a hotel, it's going to cost you dollars, because some of the families have either gone or not been aware. And I noticed that when you go home from up here to the Caribbean, everybody think you got dollars. Everybody think you got dollars. So flipping hell, I've come down here broke to see my people, and every time I go to a rum shop and all that, get me one, get me one, get me one. I'm saying it in a jovial way, but it's the truth. There's an expectation that because you in England and all that, you've got money. A lot of the Montserratians who come to Leicester say, oh, I will live better than them. Because when they say ordinary white working class people, some of them, they don't work. They must sleep a street. You know, they get caught up in the world of drugs. They have family breakdowns and all sort of shit. And basically, that's where we are. So going forward, all I want from my kids and other people's kids, take the education. Get educated so that when push comes to shove, when you go out there, you can read and write, sign your name, and you can be interviewed where you can speak English better than them. And from there, you got a chance to go forward.
Is there something you wish people would ask you about but never do?
Oh, my Lord. How long have you got? Brother, my biggest weakness is that I take myself and my family for granted. I've got 3 kids, 2 grand and 2 great grands. My relationship broke simply because I was paying too much attention to other people's problems and taking my home for granted. But you can only do it for so long. My kids used to call me meeting, because when they come home from school, I take them to school every day, don't get me wrong, but then there's a meeting. I pick them up from school, take them home, and I've gone to a meeting. So there was no warmth, there's no, in the sense, so fancy a woman living with somebody like that, where she's not getting that respect, that love. She knows it's there, but it's just, knowing is one thing, you've got to feel it from time to time. And as I said, working in Cheshire, mum and dad in London, because of their age and all that. Mum ran out at 94, you know, and dad at 79, I think. Even I had the best carers. The carers used to ring me, Joseph, your mum wants you. And me and mum was that kind of person. So there's so many people, if I walk into town now, bet you a pound to a penny that someone's going to say, Joe, could you help me? Oh, what's the problem? The doctor ain't doing this, the doctor ain't, whatever the case may be. And I'm proud because when I walk through town, people still calling me counsellor. Counsellor Joe, you all right? Sometimes I'm looking hard. I remember the face, but I can't remember the names. You know what I mean? So there's lots of things, but I'm a doer. Yes, we can. Now, all I want is the team. Because it's one thing for you to go out there and open up your big mouth and create the opportunity, but we're everybody there to benefit from the open door. Oh, Joe, me didn't say nothing because you said what me want to say. Yeah, but if 10 of you said the same thing, then we have more power. We're sitting down and keeping quiet. When on the street, you agree with me. When we're in a meeting, you just sit down there. And next thing you know, people make me enemy because I'm the one who's speaking out. So it's a picture and a half, you know. But I'm proud of my contribution. I'm proud of my children. I'm proud of my broader family, plenty of whom is in London. And we grew up with that oneness, that self-respect. And as I said, if you don't respect yourself, how can you respect others? Etc., etc., etc.